Hi friends, are you afraid of the dark? What about the things that lurk in the dark? Relax and enjoy my story. The old van rumbled to a stop, its tires crunching over the gravel road that led to the secluded cabin deep in the woods. A group of 6 students piled out, stretching their legs and breathing in the crisp autumn air. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the dense forest that surrounded them. Finally, Alex said, brushing his brown hair back. He was the one who had organized the trip. I told you guys it would be worth the drive. This place is perfect. Emma, Alex's girlfriend, stepped out after him, shivering slightly in the chilly air. It's definitely remote, she said, looking around at the towering pines that seemed to close in on them. She pulled her jacket tighter around her slim frame. No cell service either. I told you, Em, it's supposed to be a break from all that, Alex replied, wrapping an arm around her. A weekend of peace and quiet. The others emerged from the van, Jake, the class clown with a perpetual smirk on his face, Lily, the quiet one who rarely spoke but whose eyes missed nothing, Mark, tall and muscular, the undisputed leader of the school's soccer team, and finally, Chloe, the new girl who had transferred only a month ago and was still finding her place in the group. The cabin itself was an old, wooden structure, its paint peeling and roof sagging slightly. But it was sturdy enough, with a large porch and a chimney that hinted at the cozy fireplace inside. Are we sure this place is safe? Chloe asked, her voice tinged with doubt as she took in the dilapidated cabin. Of course it is, Jake said, grinning. Safe enough to hide a few bodies, at least. Lily shot him a look. Not funny, Jake. Lighten up, Lil, Jake said, slinging an arm around her shoulders. It's just a joke. Lily shrugged off his arm, her expression unchanged. Jokes are supposed to be funny. Alex, sensing the tension, quickly intervened. Let's get inside, guys. We need to unpack and start a fire before it gets too dark. The group moved towards the cabin, hauling their bags and supplies with them. Inside, it was just as rustic as the exterior suggested, a large open space with wooden beams overhead, a stone fireplace, and a few old, mismatched pieces of furniture. The kitchen was small but functional, and there were 2 bedrooms in the back, each with a couple of creaky-looking beds. This is cozy, Emma said, trying to be optimistic as she set her bag down on one of the couches. It's better than a tent in the middle of nowhere, Mark pointed out as he tossed his duffel bag onto one of the beds. At least we have a roof over our heads. Yeah, and we're here to relax and have some fun, Alex added, already starting to build a fire in the fireplace. Let's not waste time worrying about the decor. As the fire crackled to life, the cabin was filled with a warm glow. The group settled in, unpacking their things and preparing for the weekend. Outside, the forest grew darker, the trees merging into an inky blackness as night fell. Unbeknownst to them, something ancient and malevolent was watching from the shadows, waiting for the night to fully envelop the forest. The first night in the cabin passed uneventfully. The group sat around the fireplace, telling stories, playing games, and laughing. The tension from earlier in the day seemed to melt away as the fire's warmth spread through the room. By the time they all retired to their beds, the cabin was filled with the sound of contented sleep. It was around midnight when Emma woke up. She wasn't sure what had disturbed her, but as she lay in bed, she felt a strange unease. The cabin was silent, save for the occasional creak of the wood and the soft breathing of the others. But there was something else, something that set her nerves on edge. She listened intently, her breath shallow. At first, she heard nothing. But then, from outside the window, there came a faint sound. It was distant, almost imperceptible, but it made her skin prickle. A voice. Emma sat up slowly, straining to hear. The voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, and it seemed to be calling her name. Emma. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice was familiar, yet distorted, as if it were coming through a thick fog. She glanced at Alex, who was fast asleep beside her, his back rising and falling with each breath. Emma, come outside. The voice was more insistent now, and Emma's fear grew. It wasn't Alex's voice, she knew that much. But it was eerily close, like someone imitating him. She got out of bed, careful not to wake him, and moved to the window. The forest outside was a dark mass of shadows, the trees swaying gently in the wind. There was no sign of anyone out there. Emma, please. The voice was pleading now, filled with an unnatural desperation. She took a step back from the window, shaking her head. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Just as she was about to wake Alex, the voice stopped. The night was silent again, as if nothing had happened. But the feeling of dread remained, heavy and suffocating. Emma lay back down, curling into a tight ball. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night, her eyes fixed on the window, waiting for the voice to return. The next morning, Emma was quiet as the group gathered for breakfast. She hadn't told anyone about the voice, unsure if they would believe her or if it was just her imagination. But the unease lingered, making her jumpy and tense. "Hey, you okay?" Alex asked, noticing her silence as they sat around the small kitchen table. "Yeah," Emma replied, forcing a smile. "Just didn't sleep well." "Maybe some fresh air will help," Alex suggested. "We could go for a hike after breakfast. There's supposed to be a lake nearby." "Sounds good," Emma agreed, hoping that being outside in the daylight would help shake off the lingering fear. The group finished eating and got ready for the hike, packing snacks and water. As they stepped outside, the forest seemed less ominous in the daylight. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Birds chirped, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and earth. They set off down a narrow trail that wound through the woods, the mood lighter than it had been the night before. Jake and Mark walked ahead, joking and laughing, while Lily and Chloe chatted quietly behind them. Emma stayed close to Alex, her hand gripping his tightly. As they walked, the forest seemed to close in around them, the trees growing denser and the light dimming. The trail became less defined, winding through thick underbrush. Despite the beauty of the surroundings, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. After about an hour of walking, they reached the lake. It was a serene, mirror-like expanse of water surrounded by tall pines. The group stopped to take in the view, the peacefulness of the scene calming their nerves. "This is amazing," Chloe said, her eyes wide as she took in the scenery. "Worth the hike for sure." "Definitely," Mark agreed, already stripping off his shirt. "Who's up for a swim?" "You're crazy, it's freezing." Lily protested, but Mark was already running towards the water. Jake followed suit, and soon the two of them were splashing around in the lake, their laughter echoing through the trees. Emma smiled, the tension from the night before finally easing. But as she watched them, something caught her eye, a flicker of movement on the far side of the lake. She squinted, trying to make it out, but it was gone before she could be sure what it was. "Did you see that?" she asked Alex, her voice low. "See what?" he replied, looking in the direction she was staring. "There was something over there." She pointed to the trees on the other side of the lake. Alex frowned. "Probably just an animal. These woods are full of them." "Yeah, probably," Emma said, but the unease crept back in. After a while, Mark and Jake came out of the water, shivering but exhilarated. The group dried off and decided to head back to the cabin, the sun already starting to dip towards the horizon. As they made their way back, the forest seemed darker, the trees more oppressive. The sense of being watched returned, stronger this time. Emma quickened her pace, staying close to Alex. It wasn't long before the trail became difficult to follow. The underbrush was thick, and the path they had taken seemed to have vanished. They were surrounded by towering trees, all of them looking the same, with no clear direction back to the cabin. Guys? Are we lost?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Of course not," Alex said, though he sounded less confident than before. "We just need to find the trail again." But as they moved through the forest, it became clear that they were indeed lost. The trees pressed in on them from all sides, and the light was fading fast. Panic began to set in. "Okay, everyone stay calm," Mark said, taking charge. "We'll just backtrack until we find the trail." But as they turned around, a low, guttural growl echoed through the trees. The sound was inhuman, sending chills down their spines. "What was that?" Lily whispered, her face pale. "Probably just a bear or something," Jake said, though his bravado was gone. "Let's keep moving." They hurried through the woods, but the growl followed them, growing louder and closer. The forest was dark now, the sun completely hidden behind the trees. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound amplified by their fear. And then, out of the darkness, they heard it, a voice, calling their names. Alex. Jake. Emma. It was a distorted, eerie mimicry of their voices, echoing through the trees. The group froze, their blood running cold. "What the hell is that?" Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "Run!" Mark shouted, and they took off through the woods, their hearts pounding with fear. The voices followed them, growing more insistent, more desperate. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees twisting and warping in the darkness. And then, as suddenly as it began, the voices stopped. The group stumbled into a small clearing, gasping for breath. The silence was deafening, broken only by their ragged breathing. They huddled together, fear gripping them. What was that? Emma asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Alex replied, his face pale. But we need to get out of here. Which way? Lily asked, looking around at the dark forest. Alex hesitated, then pointed in a direction. This way. We need to move before it gets any darker. They set off again, moving quickly through the woods. But the sense of being hunted remained, the shadows flickering at the edge of their vision. They didn't speak, too afraid of what might happen if they did. After what felt like hours, they finally saw the cabin in the distance, its faint outline barely visible through the trees. Relief flooded through them, and they quickened their pace, desperate to reach the safety of the cabin. But just as they were about to break through the tree line, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. It was Mark. But Mark was standing right beside them. The group froze in terror, staring at the figure in front of them. It looked exactly like Mark, same height, same build, same clothes, but there was something off about it. Its eyes were too dark, its smile too wide, too unnatural. What the hell? Jake muttered, backing away slowly. The Mark figure tilted its head, mimicking Mark's movements with an eerie precision. Then it spoke, its voice a perfect replica of Mark's, but hollow, devoid of emotion. Why are you running? Come closer. Mark, the real Mark, stepped forward, his face pale with fear and anger. What are you? The figure's smile widened. I am you. Before anyone could react, the figure lunged at them, moving with an unnatural speed. The group scattered, screaming in panic. Emma grabbed Alex's hand, pulling him towards the cabin as the others ran in different directions. The creature, the Skinwalker, chased after them, its form shifting and distorting as it ran. Emma could hear it behind them, its footsteps impossibly fast, its breath hot on their necks. They burst through the cabin door, slamming it shut behind them. We need to block it, Alex shouted, pushing a heavy dresser against the door. Emma helped, her hands shaking with fear. Outside, they could hear the others screaming, the sounds of a struggle, and then, horrifyingly, silence. Jake! Lily! Emma cried, but there was no response. Only the sound of something scratching at the door, something trying to get in. Alex grabbed a fire poker from beside the fireplace, holding it like a weapon. We'll be okay, he said, though his voice trembled. We just need to hold out until morning. Emma nodded, but deep down, she wasn't sure they would survive the night. The scratching at the door stopped, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, a voice called out. Emma. Alex, it's me, Jake. Let me in. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Jake? No, don't. Alex warned, grabbing her arm. It's not him. But the voice sounded so real, so desperate. Please, Emma, it's me. I'm hurt, it's coming, let me in. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she struggled to decide. Was it really Jake? Or was it the creature, trying to trick them? I can't, she whispered, backing away from the door. Emma, please, the voice pleaded, growing more desperate. It's going to kill me. Emma covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. Stop it. Just stop. The voice outside changed, becoming colder, more sinister. Let me in, Emma, you can't hide forever. Alex tightened his grip on the fire poker, his knuckles white. Stay away from the door, he ordered, his voice shaking. But before they could react, a window shattered, and the creature burst into the cabin. It was no longer pretending to be Jake or Mark. Its true form was grotesque, a twisted, emaciated figure with pale, leathery skin, its eyes black pits of malevolence. Emma screamed as the creature lunged at them, its claws outstretched. Alex swung the fire poker with all his might, striking the creature in the side. It let out a hideous screech, but it didn't stop. It knocked Alex aside with a single swipe of its claw, sending him crashing into the wall. Emma backed away, her mind racing. She needed to do something, anything to stop the creature. Her eyes fell on the fireplace, and an idea formed in her mind. She grabbed a burning log from the fire, holding it out like a torch. The creature hesitated, its eyes narrowing as it hissed at the flames. Get back. Emma shouted, thrusting the burning log towards the creature. The creature snarled, its form shifting and flickering in the firelight. It lunged again, but Emma swung the log, catching it across the face. The creature shrieked, its skin sizzling as it recoiled from the fire. Emma didn't hesitate. She grabbed another burning log and threw it at the creature. The flames caught on its skin, and it screamed in agony, thrashing wildly as it tried to extinguish the fire. Alex, regaining his senses, grabbed the fire poker again and drove it into the creature's chest. It let out one final, blood-curdling scream before collapsing to the floor, its body convulsing as it burned. Emma and Alex watched in horror as the creature's form twisted and writhed, its skin bubbling and melting in the flames. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature was gone, reduced to nothing more than a pile of ash. The cabin was silent, save for the crackling of the fire and their own ragged breathing. They stared at the remains of the creature, unable to comprehend what had just happened. What was that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Alex replied, dropping the fire poker with a clatter. "But it's over, it's finally over." But Emma knew it wasn't over. Not really. The creature was gone, but the forest was still there, watching, waiting. And they had to get out before it claimed them too. Dawn broke over the horizon, bathing the forest in a pale light. Emma and Alex sat in silence, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and fear. They hadn't slept, too afraid that the creature might return. But as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, they began to hope that they had survived the night. "We need to leave," Alex said, his voice hoarse. "Now, while it's daylight." Emma nodded. "What about the others? Jake? Lily? Mark?" Alex's face tightened with grief. "We'll search for them, but if we don't find them, we can't stay. We have to go." They packed their things quickly, not daring to linger. The cabin felt oppressive now, filled with the lingering stench of burnt flesh and the memory of the creature's attack. They stepped outside, squinting in the bright light, and began their search. The forest was eerily silent, the trees still and watchful. They called out for the others, their voices echoing through the woods, but there was no answer. No sign of life. After an hour of searching, they found them. Jake's body was the first they came across, lying at the base of a tree. His throat had been torn out, his eyes wide open in a frozen expression of terror. Emma covered her mouth, choking back a sob as she turned away. Mark and Lily were nearby, their bodies similarly mutilated. It was clear that they hadn't stood a chance against the creature. "We need to go," Alex said, his voice tight with emotion. "There's nothing we can do for them now." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. She took one last look at her friends, then turned and followed Alex through the woods. The journey back to the van was a silent one, the horror of the night weighing heavily on their minds. Emma kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see more of them. And thinking, how can she go back to her normal life after all that she has seen?